Welcome, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? This time, it's all about change, seen through the lens of Buddhist philosophy. And you guys know, you picked the topic, which makes it even more exciting. We've got sources that touch on everything from Oprah's incredible journey to some practical psychology and even wabi-sabi.
It sounds like there's a real curiosity around how these diverse perspectives intersect with this universal experience we all share, change. I'm looking forward to exploring that with you. It can be a real challenge for so many of us, even when we know it's necessary.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of challenges, one of the sources jumped right into this idea that our brains seem hardwired to seek comfort and avoid uncertainty. Makes sense for survival, I guess, but man, it can keep us stuck.
You're right, it can. And that's where the Buddhist concept of impermanence comes in. It's not about just accepting constant change passively, it's about actively engaging with that reality. Everything is in flux, from our thoughts and emotions right down to the very cells in our bodies.
So instead of fighting against this constant flow, Buddhism encourages us to embrace impermanence. It's kind of like accepting it as a fundamental truth and finding liberation in that.
Exactly. It's incredibly liberating. When we stop resisting what's inevitable, it frees up so much energy. We can finally engage with life as it unfolds. One of the sources had this beautiful analogy. It said, just as the lotus grows in muddy water, beauty and growth arise from life's challenges. Isn't that great?
It is. So instead of seeing change as a threat, we can view it as the ground from which we bloom. And it makes me think of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. He left a life of privilege, to confront suffering head-on and ultimately achieved enlightenment.
It's powerful, isn't it? His journey is a reminder that sometimes the most transformative action we can take is stepping outside of our comfort zone, no matter how comfortable or privileged that zone might be.
It makes you wonder what incredible things we could achieve if we all dared to venture beyond our routines, our beliefs.
And here's the empowering part. Embracing change doesn't have to be about these huge, sudden leaps. Buddhism, it emphasizes small, consistent actions. Think of it like a ripple effect, a small shift in how you see things, a tiny habit change. What's something small you, listener, could change that might have a surprisingly big impact over time?
It's like setting an intention, right? Changing your mindset before your circumstances actually shift. And our sources really dug into the psychology behind that, which I found really interesting. Makes it all feel less philosophical and more practical.
Absolutely, and mindfulness plays a big part here, being present in the moment, observing your thoughts but without judgment. It gives us space to choose how we respond to challenges instead of just reacting in those habitual, often unhelpful ways.
That reminds me of a quote from one of the sources that said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." It really highlights how negativity keeps us stuck and how fostering hope and a sense of possibility unlocks our potential. But how do we actually make these internal changes? I mean, it can feel abstract, right?
Well, the sources point to some really practical concepts from Buddhist philosophy that can guide us. One that stood out is this idea of seeds. These are small habits and rituals that can lead to profound change over time.
Like that story in one of the sources about the entrepreneur whose life was transformed by simply adding a morning ritual of meditation and gratitude. It's inspiring to see how something so simple can ripple outward, impact so many areas.
That's right effort in action, a key concept in Buddhism. It's not about forcing change through sheer will, it's steady progress, nurturing helpful habits and gently letting go of those that aren't serving us. Progress, not perfection.
So, no need for a complete life overhaul overnight. Phew. But where do we even begin with those seeds of change?
There's this fascinating connection between these ancient seeds and modern research on neuroplasticity. Small changes, done consistently, literally rewire our brains.
So it's not just feel-good philosophy. We have tangible scientific evidence that we can change the way our minds work.
Wow. And once we make those internal shifts, shouldn't that change show up in our external world too? Careers, relationships, even our sense of purpose.
Precisely. And that leads us to a crucial question. How does this inner transformation translate into a more successful life?
One of the sources used the analogy of a tree's strong roots, which represent inner growth, are what lead to flourishing branches. That's external success.
And Oprah Winfrey's story is a perfect embodiment of that. She faced incredible hardship, but her ability to transform those experiences into opportunities and constantly evolve, that's what fueled her success.
It's a beautiful illustration of this Buddhist teaching. Every morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most. Every moment is a chance for a fresh start.
Absolutely. And with that fresh start comes the opportunity to tap into the specific ways internal change leads to external success. The sources highlighted 4 key areas. Do you remember those? Let's see. There was clarity of purpose, um, resilience through adaptation,
Yes, and then breaking limiting beliefs.
and momentum through action. That's it. These sound intriguing, but what do they actually look like in practice?
Well, starting with clarity of purpose, embracing change and stepping outside that comfort zone often forces you to figure out what truly matters. It's like shaking up a snow globe, you know? Things settle differently and you get a fresh perspective.
It's about defining success on your own terms, not based on what others expect. So that involves asking some big questions, right? What do I really want and why do I want it?
Exactly. And it's okay if the answers feel messy or uncertain at first. The key is to explore. Write it down, sit with those questions, that clarity, that knowing it becomes your compass, guiding your decisions and actions.
And what about resilience through adaptation? Right? How does embracing change make us more resilient?
Think of it this way, life is going to throw unexpected twists and turns our way. But if we learn to adapt, to adjust our course when those curveballs inevitably come, it makes us so much stronger. We don't crumble at the first sign of difficulty.
We learn to bend, not break. And it makes me think of that Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, finding the beauty in imperfection and impermanence. Instead of chasing that illusion of perfection, we can embrace those cracks and imperfections.
That's beautifully put. And it's so relevant to building resilience. Instead of getting frustrated when things don't go according to plan, we see those moments as chances to learn and grow, to become more flexible, more resourceful.
It sounds like a much more liberating way to deal with life's ups and downs,
Yeah.
especially as the world keeps changing faster and faster.
Absolutely. Embracing change as fuel for resilience is crucial in today's world. But there's more. We've got those pesky limiting beliefs that often hold us back.
Right, those sneaky negative thoughts we all have, like, I'm not good enough or I'll never be able to.
Exactly those. And the first step is recognizing them, noticing them when they pop up in our thoughts, our conversations, even our actions.
So it's like paying attention to those inner voices, those automatic negative thought patterns. And once we recognize them, how do we challenge them?
One powerful technique is asking yourself, is this belief really serving me? Is it helping me grow, evolve, or is it holding me back?
Putting those limiting beliefs on trial. We're demanding evidence to support their claims.
Exactly. And often when we examine them closely, we realize they're based on outdated information or fears that are no longer relevant or limiting stories we've been telling ourselves for way too long.
It's about rewriting those old stories, creating new narratives that empower us to step into our full potential.
That's it. And that process can be incredibly liberating, reclaiming our power, choosing to believe in ourselves and our ability to create the life we want.
We are the authors of our own stories.
Right.
We choose the stories we tell ourselves, the beliefs we hold on to. But once we've challenged those beliefs, how do we turn that newfound freedom into tangible action?
That's where momentum through action comes in. It's about aligning our actions with our values, our goals, those new beliefs we're embracing, taking those consistent, intentional steps, no matter how small, as long as they move us in the right direction.
It's about putting those new beliefs into practice, stepping outside those comfort zones.
Yes. And remember, action doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing. It could be setting aside 10 minutes a day to meditate, or reaching out to a friend you haven't talked to in a while, or finally signing up for that online course you've been thinking about.
It's about showing up for yourself and your dreams day after day, even when you don't feel like it, when you're scared, even when those doubts creep in.
That's the spirit. And here's the magical part. Each step you take, each act of courage builds on the last. You create this ripple effect that pushes you forward on your journey.
It's that snowball effect, gaining momentum as it rolls downhill. And before you know it, all those small steps add up to significant change. But I'm guessing it's not always easy, right? There must be times when you feel discouraged, overwhelmed, and maybe even want to give up.
Absolutely. Change is a journey, not a destination. And like any journey, there will be bumps, detours, unexpected challenges. And during those challenging times, it becomes even more crucial to cultivate a supportive inner world.
The sources talked a lot about gratitude and self-compassion. Why are they so important, especially when things get tough?
Think of them as antidotes to fear, to doubt, to that inner critic that pops up, especially when we're stepping outside our comfort zones.
Gratitude helps us see the good, even when things are hard. It reminds us to appreciate the good things we already have. And self-compassion allows us to be kind to ourselves when we inevitably make mistakes.
Precisely. It's about treating ourselves the way we'd treat a good friend who's going through a rough patch. We wouldn't put them down or tell them they're not good enough, right? We'd offer support, encouragement, understanding.
So true. But we're often so much harder on ourselves than we are on others. We judge ourselves, criticize ourselves, set impossibly high standards. And that inner critic can be incredibly damaging when we're trying to embrace change. It can sabotage our efforts, fuel our doubts, and keep us from moving forward.
That's exactly it. So how do we quiet that inner critic? How do we cultivate more self-compassion, especially when we're facing challenges?
It's like we need to find a way to turn down the volume on that negative self-talk and turn up the volume on self-kindness and encouragement.
Absolutely. One simple practice is to simply notice when that inner critic shows up. Pay attention to the language it uses, the tone, the feelings it triggers, and then consciously choose to respond with kindness and understanding.
So instead of getting caught in that negative spiral, we offer ourselves words of support, encouragement. We remind ourselves that we're doing the best we can with what we have at this moment.
That's it. Another powerful practice is to visualize a figure of compassion. It could be a spiritual teacher, a wise mentor, even a loving pet. Imagine that figure offering you words of kindness, comfort, encouragement.
That visualization is beautiful. It's like tapping into this wellspring of unconditional love and support that's always available, even when we feel alone or lost.
Beautifully put. And as we cultivate self-compassion, we create this safe space inside where we can grow and evolve without fear of judgment or criticism. And from that space of self-acceptance, we can step out into the world with so much more confidence, so much more courage, ready to embrace everything life has to offer.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will hold on to? Something to inspire them to take that first step towards embracing change in their lives.
The journey of embracing change is a deeply personal one. It's not about following someone else's rules or measuring success by external markers. It's about aligning with your own values, your own aspirations, your own unique path. And it's a lifelong journey full of growth, discovery, transformation. It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
You beautifully said. And on that note, dear listener, we invite you to embark on this journey of embracing change. Embrace the uncertainty, the discomfort, the unknown. Trust that within those challenges lie the seeds of your greatest growth and fulfillment. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. We're all in this together, walking this path of change and transformation, one step at a time.
It is a powerful choice. Choosing to embrace change. It can feel daunting though, especially when we've been conditioned to fear the unknown.
It's almost like we're wired to resist change even when we understand it's necessary. Our sources really highlighted how much discomfort can come with change.
And that discomfort is real. Very real. It often comes from our deep need for security, for things to be predictable. But what if, and this is interesting, what if we could shift how we see it? What if that discomfort was actually a sign, a signal that we're on the path to growth?
Okay, I like that. So instead of shying away from that discomfort, we could actually lean into it, recognize it as a catalyst for transformation. Kind of like no pain, no gain, but for personal growth instead of physical exercise.
I like that analogy. Embracing change means stepping outside those comfort zones, venturing into the unknown. But how do we navigate that unknown? How do we make sure the changes we're making lead to a more successful and fulfilling life?
That's the big question, right? And our sources offered this fascinating framework for understanding how inner transformation can actually show up as external success. They talked about clarity of purpose, resilience through adaptation, breaking those limiting beliefs, and momentum through action. They all seem connected, don't they?
They absolutely do. They work together, each one building on the other. Let's start with clarity of purpose. As we talked about before, embracing change often forces us to reevaluate, figure out what really matters, what are our priorities. It's about aligning our actions with our values and aspirations.
It's like creating a roadmap for our lives, making sure we're heading in the right direction, one that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
Exactly, and that roadmap isn't fixed, It's a living thing. It evolves as we do. The key is to check in with ourselves regularly. Ask ourselves, am I still on a path that aligns with my values, with my hopes and dreams? If not, what adjustments do I need to make? What needs to change?
It's about being flexible, recognizing that our goals and priorities can change over time. Which brings us to resilience through adaptation. Our sources really emphasize this, especially in today's world.
Resilience is so essential. It's how we navigate the bumps in the road, the setbacks we all face. And it's tied to our ability to adapt to change. Think of a willow tree bending in the wind. It doesn't fight the wind, it yields to it, allowing its branches to move. And it actually becomes stronger because of it.
That's a beautiful image. It's about approaching change with that same flexibility, that fluidity, rather than rigidity and resistance.
Precisely. When we learn to adapt, adjust our course when the winds change, we become so much more resilient when things get tough. We don't fall apart at the first sign of trouble. We learn to navigate those challenges with grace and determination.
It sounds like cultivating a mindset of acceptance is a big part of developing resilience. Accepting that life is going to throw curveballs, and our ability to handle those curveballs is what defines our success.
You got it. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up or being passive. It means acknowledging what is without judgment, without resistance. And from that place of acceptance, we can choose how we respond, how we adapt, how we grow.
That's really empowering. We always have a choice, even in the face of tough circumstances. But what about those limiting beliefs? The ones that often hold us back. Our sources talked about breaking free from those self-imposed limitations.
Yes, limiting beliefs are like invisible chains, They bind us to our past and keep us from realizing our full potential. And they often stem from negative experiences or messages we've internalized over time. It's like they whisper doubts in our ears. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not worthy of pursuing your dreams.
And it's amazing how these beliefs can hold us back without us even realizing it. They become so ingrained we don't even question them.
That's why it's so crucial to bring those beliefs to the surface, Shine a light on them, examine them. The first step is awareness, noticing them when they pop up. In our thoughts, our conversations, our actions.
Paying attention to those inner voices, the negative self-talk that we often do without even realizing it. And once we're aware of those limiting beliefs, how do we go about challenging them?
Well, one powerful technique is to simply ask yourself, is this belief really serving me? Is it helping me grow and evolve? Or is it holding me back from reaching my full potential?
It's like putting those beliefs on trial, demanding evidence.
I love that. And often, when we look closely at those beliefs, we discover they're based on outdated information, or fears that are no longer valid, or stories we've been telling ourselves for far too long.
It's about rewriting those old stories, creating new narratives that empower us to step into our full potential.
Beautifully said. And that process can be so liberating. It's reclaiming your power, choosing to believe in yourself and your ability to create the life you truly desire.
We are the authors of our own lives, right? We choose the stories we tell ourselves, the beliefs we hold on to. But once we've challenged those beliefs, how do we turn that newfound freedom into action? How do we make it real?
That's where momentum through action comes in. Aligning our actions with our values or goals and those new beliefs we're embracing. Taking consistent, intentional steps, no matter how small, as long as they're moving us in the right direction.
It's about putting those beliefs into practice, taking those brave steps outside our comfort zones.
Exactly. And remember, action doesn't have to be some grand, dramatic gesture. It can be as simple as setting aside 10 minutes each day to meditate, or reaching out to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, or finally signing up for that online course you've been thinking about.
It's about showing up for yourself, for your dreams, day after day, even when you don't feel like it, when you're scared, when those doubts creep in.
That's the spirit. And here's the beautiful thing about momentum through action. Each small step you take, each act of courage, it builds on the last. You create this ripple effect that propels you forward on your journey.
Like a snowball rolling downhill, gaining momentum as it goes. And before you know it, those small steps have led to significant change. But I imagine it's not always easy. There must be times when discouragement sets in, or you feel overwhelmed, tempted to give up.
Of course, it's not always easy. Change is a journey, remember, not a destination. And like any journey, there will be bumps in the road, detours, unexpected challenges. And that's when cultivating a supportive inner landscape becomes even more crucial.
Our sources talked a lot about gratitude and self-compassion as essential tools for this journey. Why are these qualities so important, especially when things get tough?
Think of them as antidotes to the fear, to the self-doubt, to that inner critic that can be so loud, especially when we're pushing ourselves to grow.
Gratitude helps us to see the good even when things are difficult. It reminds us to appreciate what we already have. And self-compassion allows us to be kind to ourselves when we inevitably mess up, when we stumble or fall short.
Exactly. It's treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding We would offer a good friend who's going through a tough time. We wouldn't beat them up for their mistakes or tell them they're not good enough, would we? We'd offer support, encouragement, understanding.
That's so true. But we're often way harder on ourselves than we are on anyone else. We judge ourselves, criticize ourselves, set these crazy high standards. And that inner critic, it can be so damaging, especially when we're trying to embrace change. It can totally sabotage our efforts, fuel our doubts, and keep us stuck.
That's exactly what happens. So how do we silence that inner critic? How do we cultivate more self-compassion, especially when things are challenging?
It's like we need to turn down the volume on that negative self-talk and turn up the volume on self-kindness and encouragement.
One simple but powerful practice is to simply notice when that inner critic shows up. Pay attention to the language it uses, the tone of voice, the feelings it evokes, and then consciously choose to respond with kindness and understanding.
So instead of getting caught up in that negative spiral, we can offer ourselves words of encouragement and support. We can remind ourselves that we're doing the best we can with what we have, right here, right now.
That's it. And another powerful practice is to visualize a figure of compassion. It could be a spiritual teacher, a wise mentor, even a loving pet. Imagine that figure offering you words of kindness, comfort, encouragement.
I love that visualization, like tapping into a wellspring of unconditional love and support. It's always available to us, even when we feel alone or discouraged.
Beautifully put. As we cultivate self-compassion, we create this safe space inside ourselves, a space where we can grow, evolve, without fear of judgment or criticism. And from that space of self-acceptance, we can step out into the world with so much more confidence and courage, ready to embrace everything life throws our way.
This conversation has been incredibly insightful. We've covered so much ground. From exploring Buddhist principles of impermanence and right effort, to these practical tools like setting clear intentions, creating supportive rituals, cultivating gratitude and self-compassion, it's been amazing. But before we move on, I'm curious, what's one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to hold on to? Something to inspire them to take action, to start embracing change in their own lives.
I'd say this: change is an invitation to step outside our comfort zones, to challenge those limiting beliefs, to become the best versions of ourselves. It's an invitation to live a life that's in alignment with our values, our purpose, our deepest desires.
I love that. It's a reminder that change, which we often view as something scary or something to resist, can actually be the catalyst for incredible growth and transformation.
Exactly. And the choice is ours. We can view change as a threat or as an opportunity. We can cling to the familiar or embrace the unknown. The power is within each of us.
This has been an incredibly empowering conversation. But where do we go from here? How do we take all this wisdom and put it into action in our own lives?
That's a great question. Let's explore that further as we continue our deep dive.
Wow, we've really been on quite a journey with this deep dive, haven't we? Exploring change through this lens of Buddhist philosophy. We've uncovered so much about why we resist change, how we can look at it differently, and even some really practical techniques to navigate it better. What's standing out to you, listeners, as we wrap things up?
It really is amazing how these ancient Buddhist teachings, centuries old, feel so relevant to our lives today.
Right, it feels like we're bombarded with change these days, faster than ever. Understanding these core principles, it just feels essential now.
Absolutely. And it's not just about getting through the changes, it's about thriving in the middle of all of it.
Exactly. We saw with Oprah, embracing change can lead to incredible success, internally and externally.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between knowing that intellectually and actually living it, right? So how do we bridge that gap? How do we take all this wisdom and make it real in our lives?
It's not about suddenly becoming a Buddhist scholar or memorizing all the ancient texts. It's about integrating these principles into our daily lives in a way that feels genuine and good for us. It's about cultivating this mindset that actually embraces change, seeing it as a natural part of life, something that can help us become the best version of ourselves.
And I remember our sources emphasized starting small. Pick one or two things that resonate with you and do them consistently. It's those small things repeated over time that can lead to really big shifts. What are some examples? What are some small things our listeners could start doing?
Well, one practice that's both accessible and powerful is mindfulness meditation. It's so simple, you don't need anything special. You find a comfortable seated position, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. As you're focusing on your breath, thoughts will pop up. That's natural. Don't get swept away by them. Just notice them and gently bring your attention back to your breath.
I love how simple it is. Anyone can do it, anywhere, anytime. And the benefits are incredible. It calms the mind, reduces stress.
Right.
You cultivate the sense of presence and awareness that can be so helpful when dealing with change.
Exactly. And as you practice mindfulness, you start to see those habitual patterns, those knee-jerk reactions to change, the ones that often cause us stress and make things harder. With practice, you learn to pause, to create space between what's happening and how you react. You can then choose a better way to respond.
So we're talking about mastering our minds, training ourselves to react to change with more calmness and ease rather than fear.
Exactly. And as we cultivate that inner strength, we naturally become more resilient, more adaptable, and more capable of navigating all the ups and downs of life.
I like that. Our sources also talked about gratitude, especially when facing challenges. Why is that so important, even when things are tough?
Gratitude is like this powerful antidote to negativity, to fear, to feeling hopeless. It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we already have, from what's wrong to what's right. When we practice gratitude, we're training our minds to see the good, to appreciate all the abundance that already exists. It can totally change how we see change itself.
It's like putting on rose-colored glasses. Suddenly the world seems brighter, even the challenges seem smaller.
That's it. And the best part is, gratitude doesn't need any special circumstances. You can find things to be grateful for in every single moment, big or small. The warmth of the sun, the sound of birds, a kind gesture from a stranger, all those little moments of gratitude, they add up. And you start to develop a more positive, more optimistic outlook. And that makes us so much more open to change.
I love that. It's about finding those little sparks of joy in everyday life, those little reminders that even when things are tough, there's always something to appreciate. But what about self-compassion? Our sources kept coming back to that. Why is it so important to be kind to ourselves, especially when we're trying new things, stepping out of our comfort zones?
Self-compassion is really the foundation of resilience. It lets us be kind to ourselves when we make mistakes, which will happen, when we stumble, when we don't quite live up to our expectations. Remember, change is a process, not a finish line. There will be times when we get lost, make wrong turns, or just need a break.
That's true. It's about treating ourselves the way we'd treat a close friend who's going through a tough time. We wouldn't yell at them for their mistakes or tell them they're not good enough. We'd offer support, encouragement, understanding.
Exactly, and yet so often we're way harsher on ourselves than we would ever be to anyone else. We judge ourselves, criticize ourselves, set these impossible standards, and that inner critic, it's so damaging when you're trying to embrace change. It sabotages our efforts, makes our fears and doubts louder, and keeps us stuck.
So how do we quiet that inner critic?
Yeah.
How do we cultivate more self-compassion, especially when things feel hard?
Well, a good place to start is simply noticing when that inner critic shows up. What's it saying? What's the tone of voice like? What feelings does it bring up? And then try to respond with kindness and understanding instead.
So instead of engaging in that negative self-talk, we choose to offer ourselves words of support and validation. We remind ourselves that we are doing our best with what we have right now.
Exactly. And another powerful practice is visualization. Imagine a figure of compassion. It could be a spiritual teacher, a wise mentor, even a loving pet. Picture that figure offering you words of kindness, comfort, and encouragement.
I love that. It's like tapping into this wellspring of unconditional love and support, always there for us, even when we feel alone or discouraged.
Beautifully put. As we cultivate self-compassion, we create a safe space within ourselves, a space to grow, to evolve, without the fear of judgment or criticism. And from that place of self-acceptance, we can go out into the world with so much more confidence, so much more courage, ready to embrace all that life has to offer.
It's been such a rich and inspiring conversation. We've learned so much. We explored Buddhist principles like impermanence and right effort, and we dug into practical tools like setting clear intentions, creating helpful rituals, cultivating gratitude and self-compassion. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought you'd like to leave with our listener? Something that will inspire them to embrace change and take that first step.
Remember this, the journey of embracing change, it's a deeply personal one. It's not about following a set of rules or achieving some external measure of success. It's about aligning with your values, your aspirations, your unique path. It's a lifelong journey of growth, discovery, and transformation. It's a beautiful thing.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's a reminder that change, something we often see as something to be afraid of, can be the catalyst for amazing growth and transformation. And the choice is ours.
Exactly. We can choose to see change as a threat or as an opportunity. We can cling to what we know or embrace the unknown. The power is within each and every one of us.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the heart of change. We hope you've gained valuable insights and are feeling empowered to embark on your own journey of embracing change. Remember, every moment is a fresh start. So take a deep breath, step outside your comfort zone, and embrace the transformative power of change. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep embracing the beautiful journey of life.